There is some debate over which hardwood species is the tallest in North America, but one of the contenders for the title is a skyscraping hardwood common to the eastern deciduous forest, the tulip poplar, Liriodendron tulipifera, which can be found throughout a huge chunk of the eastern United States. Tulip poplar, which is also called tulip tree or yellow poplar, depending on where you live, is a beautiful tree that produces extremely showy flowers and has stellar fall color. It equals its looks with its value to wildlife, value to native pollinators, as a host plant for some super cool species, and its economic importance throughout its range due to the value of its multi-purpose wood. It also has a sweeter economic importance that I will get to in a bit, but first let's learn a bit about the natural history of tulip poplar, some cool and fun facts about it, and how to identify it when we encounter it in the field. Tulip poplar is a pioneer species and can be found growing in areas that have been disturbed and have a good amount of sunlight reaching the ground. Places like fallow fields and pastures, areas that have been logged, places where a strong storm has knocked down the tree cover, roadsides and right-of-ways that are mowed on a long interval. Any place there is open, disturbed ground with sunlight hitting it is prime real estate for tulip poplar. I want to quickly point out that tulip poplar is another example of common name shenanigans. It isn't actually a poplar, or even closely related to them. It's actually a member of the Magnoliaceae, the Magnolia family, which will make a bit more sense when we talk about its flowers. Tulip poplar is our largest native eastern hardwood species, with an average mature size of 80 to 120 feet tall with a 30 to 60 foot spread. There are historical accounts of trees reaching over 200 feet tall with 8 to 10 foot diameter trunks. Currently, the largest known living tulip poplar is in the Fork Ridge area of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and is known as the Tall One. It was measured by tape drop at 191 feet, 10 inches tall. If you ever want to see some truly huge tulip poplars, the Great Smoky Mountains is the place to go. I highly recommend it if you love big trees. When growing in the open with no competition for light, it tends to have a pyramidal growth form with branches reaching near the ground, like a Christmas tree. If it receives some shade from competition, tulip poplar will grow with a tall, straight trunk, with a small, more open canopy basically in the top third or so of the tree. Those tall, straight, limbless trunks, or boles as they are called in forestry, are what make tulip poplar such an excellent lumber tree. The characteristics that make it a great lumber tree, large mature size and fast growth rate of around 2 to 5 feet per year, also make tulip poplar not such a great choice for landscape usage. There are many tulip poplar cultivars that are smaller and more appropriate for yards, size-wise, but they tend to shed a lot of limbs as they grow, and the limbs are also quite prone to wind and especially ice damage as the wood is not overly strong for a hardwood species. If you want a tulip poplar in a smaller space, a way it can be managed is to take advantage of its strong tendency to stump sprout and coppice it, or cut it to the ground, every 2 to 3 years, which will keep it shorter and shrubby. Tulip poplar wood is light in weight for hardwood, and while not as strong as many other eastern hardwood species, it produces lumber that is very stable once dried. It is rather plain looking and usually doesn't have highly figured grain like other highly sought eastern hardwoods such as black walnut or wild black cherry. The sapwood is creamy white to pale yellow and may be hard to tell apart from the greenish yellow heartwood in some trees. There is an exception to this called rainbow poplar, which looks just like the name sounds and is produced by naturally occurring mineral staining in some trees. The color of rainbow poplar varies widely and often brings premium prices. While the wood isn't what you would want to build fine wood furniture out of, a good-sized tree will produce a large amount of straight, clear lumber that is easy to mill and work, and is used for just about everything wood is used for. Furniture and cabinets, plywood, veneer, paper pulp, dimensional lumber, musical instruments such as acoustic guitars, and wooden toys. Quite a few farm structures are built from tulip poplar in my area of Kentucky. Our old barn has a tulip poplar frame, as does our much newer garage. This wide range of uses for tulip poplar lumber and wood make it one of the most economically important trees in eastern North America. A historical use of tulip poplar by the Native Americans of the Southeast was to use the large straight trunks of tulip poplar to make dugout canoes, leading to another common name of this tree, canoe wood. If you love our awesome native trees like the tall growing tulip poplar, please go hug that like button. Tulip poplar prefers moist, well-drained, slightly acidic soil and does its best in these soil conditions, although it is more adaptable to a wide range of soil pH. It is not tolerant of compacted soil or excessive heat and drought, or of overly wet or flooded sites. A common site of drought stress in tulip poplar is the yellowing and dropping of leaves during prolonged hot summer dry spells. Tulip poplar does need access to full sunlight to thrive and is very shade intolerant. If a tulip poplar becomes shaded out by a faster growing tree, or if it is a sprout trying to grow beneath a closed canopy, it will rapidly decline and eventually die. Partial shade is tolerated, but not optimal for growth or overall health of the tree. In the wild, tulip poplar growing in good conditions has an average lifespan of 200 to 300 years. When growing under optimal conditions, tulip poplar has been known to live up to 500 years. Tulip poplar leaves have a distinctive four-lobed shape and are 3 to 9 inches long by 5 to 8 inches wide on average. As the leaves are expanding in the spring, there are 2 conspicuous tongue-like stipules at the base of the petiole or leaf stem. These stipules drop off soon after the leaves are fully expanded. The upper leaf surface is a lustrous, glossy dark green to yellow-green. The lower surface is paler and often has a whitish bloom on it. The leaves feel waxy, are somewhat thick, and both leaf surfaces are smooth. The leaf margin or edge is smooth and untoothed. Arrangement of the leaves on the twigs is alternate. The fall color is a beautiful golden yellow. Not only does tulip poplar have a super cool leaf shape, the foliage also serves as a larval host plant for over 24 species of butterflies and moths, including the chunky green caterpillars of the eastern tiger swallowtail butterfly, the almost alien-looking caterpillars of the aptly named tulip tree silk moth, which feed almost exclusively on tulip poplar leaves, and the inchworm-like caterpillars of the also aptly named tulip tree beauty. Deer will also eat the leaves from young tulip poplar sprouts. Keeping all these tree identification traits straight can be tough, and a good field guide can be a huge help in figuring out what tree you are looking at. One of my favorite tree field guides is the Trees of Eastern North America due to its huge species coverage, including native, introduced, and invasive species, and its simple, well laid out format. It has a quick ID for every species which focuses on key identifying features of that species, as well as a detailed species description and habitat and range breakdown. And one of my favorite features of this book is the similar species section, which tells which species are likely to be confused with a particular tree and how to tell them apart. The book is worth it just for that feature alone. Trees of Eastern North America is one of the most used books in my library, and I am sure you will love it too. I will put a link to it in the description. This is an affiliate link, which simply means we get a small commission from the seller, which goes to help support the channel. No extra cost to you. Tulip poplar has some of the most distinctive bark of our eastern hardwoods when young. The young saplings have smooth whitish gray bark that is divided by fine light-colored fissures. As the tree ages, the bark becomes a bit darker gray, and the fissures become deeper and darker and divide the bark into narrow, square, flat-topped ridges that give the tree a look that is quite easy to spot once learned. The bark texture at this age also has a feel that is quite different from other eastern hardwood trees, and with some experience you can actually ID tulip poplar by touch. Old trees will have dark gray to black, coarse furrowed bark, and the flat ridges also become rougher. As tulip poplar gets some age on it, the bark starts to lose its distinctiveness, and they begin to look a lot like many other trees that are in the eastern hardwood forest. The inner bark was used medicinally by the Native Americans as a treatment for cough and cholera. The twigs are stout, reddish brown to purplish, smooth once mature, and are aromatic when crushed. They smell sort of like magnolia blossoms and maybe a bit like citrus. It's hard to describe, but they do have a smell to them. If you slice a twig lengthwise, you will see that the pith is chambered. The partitions are green and the white pith is solid between them. The terminal bud, the bud at the tip of the twig, is very distinctive and is a great way to ID tulip poplar sprouts in the winter. The terminal bud is compressed laterally, which means it is flattened, and it is somewhat long and rounded at the tip. The best way to describe it in a way you will not forget is that it looks like a duck's bill. Super quick story. When I was taking dendrology as a freshman wildlife biology student, our professor gave us quizzes out in the field. And one of the plants he gave us to identify was a tiny little 6-inch tall sprout growing out of a stump that had been cut to the dirt. It was wintertime, there weren't any leaves, there was no bark on the stump to use for identification, and the only way to identify that tiny little sprout of a tree was by that duck-billed shaped bud on the end of it that ID'd it as a tulip poplar. That quiz was during our class trip to the Smokies, and later on that day we ventured into a valley and had a truly spiritual experience with some huge, gigantic tulip poplar trees. Now we get to the other thing tulip poplars are known for. They're awesome flowers. The flowers are large, from 2 to 4.5 inches in diameter and 1.5 to 2 inches tall, are cup-shaped, and have 9 tepals. Tepal is a botanic term that is used when the outer parts of a flower can't easily be differentiated into sepals and petals. It is commonly used when describing flowers of trees in the Magnolia family. There are 6 large tepals that act as the petals of the flower. These are yellowish green and blotched with orange. There are also 3 smaller, reflex green tepals under the showy parts of the flower, but they are deciduous and fall off quickly. There are numerous thick stamens, and the pistils are fused into a central cone. Bloom time is from April to June, depending on location. The flowers may be tough to see, even though they are large, as they bloom after the leaves are fully emerged. And they begin blooming at the top of the tree and then work their way down as the season progresses. Open-grown pyramidal-shaped trees generally give the best floral display, at least for us humans. One way to tell if a tulip poplar is blooming is to look for fallen tepals on the ground under the tree, or even entire flowers that have broken free and fallen. Tulip poplar gets many of its common names from these showy flowers, but they are also the source of its scientific name, both the genus and the specific epithet. The genus name Liriodendron translates to lily tree, and the specific epithet tulipifera means bearing tulips. Tulip poplar is also odd as it is the only member of the genus Liriodendron native to North America, and one of only 2 living species in the genus. The other being the Chinese tulip tree Liriodendron chinense. The beautiful blooms of tulip poplar and its overall pleasing growth form, combined with its economic value, have resulted in it being chosen as the state tree of Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana. The showy flowers produce a copious amount of nectar and attract a wide array of pollinators, including various native bees, honeybees, and butterflies. Hummingbirds also visit the flowers, along with one of my favorite birds, the beautiful cedar waxwing. The flowers are only viable for pollination for a short time, around 12 to 24 daylight hours. After that, the stigmas are no longer receptive to pollen. Deer will eat flowers that fall to the ground or those that they can reach on the tree. And now we come to the second, and sweeter, major economic importance of tulip poplar. It is a major nectar source for honey production across its range. Honeybees are highly attracted to tulip poplar blooms, and the sheer number of blooms available in a stand of tulip poplar, combined with the long bloom period, from 2 to 6 weeks for an individual tree depending on its size and age, makes it a fairly reliable nectar source. Weather can have an impact on the nectar flow, as rain can dilute or even wash the nectar from the large open flowers. Spring honey produced in my region of Kentucky is predominantly tulip poplar, with a good dose of black locust and a bit of blackberry blossom. And it is delicious. Which brings up a question. What is your favorite type of honey? Please let us know down in the comments. If you don't have one or don't eat honey, then please drop a butterfly emoji in the comments to help this video get shown to more people. The fused pistils in the center of the flower form into a 2 to 3 inch long by 3/4 inch wide cone-shaped aggregate of Samaras. A Samara is a winged seed, like maples have, although tulip poplar Samaras are smaller and straighter than maple Samaras. This aggregate of Samaras is considered the fruit of the tulip poplar, and it starts out green and turns brown as it matures, ending up looking like a small tight pine cone. Once fully mature, the Samaras will separate and fall from the fruit through the fall and winter and be distributed by the wind. The aggregates usually mature around September or October, depending on location. The central spike and the outer scales of the aggregate are persistent through the winter and look like wooden flowers on the tips of the branches, and are a great way to spot and ID tulip poplar when the leaves are off the tree. Tulip poplar produces a ton of seed. It often looks like it is constantly raining their small, straight Samaras and tulip poplar stands during the fall. This high seed output can result in quite impressive production of tulip poplar seedlings in places where the conditions are conducive to the seeds germinating. This is another thing to be aware of if planting tulip poplar in a landscape situation. You will likely be dealing with a bunch of seedlings if the location is in full sun. Squirrels do eat the Samara aggregates, often before they fully ripen and are still green. Songbirds like the northern cardinal and chickadees also feed on the seeds, but usually late in the winter once other food sources have been reduced. Tulip poplar is truly an awesome tree. It grows super tall, has incredibly beautiful flowers, provides for a ton of pollinators and caterpillars, and produces valuable lumber and nectar for great tasting honey. As great as tulip poplar is, it is a tree probably best suited for natural areas, at least in its wild form. Some of the smaller cultivars may be better suited for smaller spaces, but there is still the issue of dropped limbs due to wind and ice, and the huge seed load it produces. If you are looking for an excellent yard tree that looks great, stays small, and also provides for native pollinators and is a host plant, then the Eastern Redbud, Cercis canadensis, might be an excellent choice. And you can learn all about it in this video, and be sure to take some time and enjoy nature in your backyard.